Good evening, everyone. This is John W. Vandercook speaking for Alka-Seltzer, bringing you the news of the world. The whole world now knows that the Congress of the United States, with but one single vote in opposition, solemnly accepted war with Japan this afternoon. And more than half the world now fights beside us. Great Britain has kept its word. Britain declared war against Japan today. 4 small nearby neighbor countries, Cuba, Haiti, Honduras, and the Dominican Republic, have just in the past few hours from friendship lined up too beside us. Meanwhile, Japan's tremendous naval blitzkrieg, a new device in the whole history of war. The truth cannot be blinked, has won by shock tactics the opening round. Casualties in Hawaii yesterday touched at least 3,000. Violent Japanese air attacks near Manila this morning set tremendous gasoline storage fires. And for what it is worth, Tokyo has just claimed that the American islands of Guam and Wake have been captured. And now, something tells me that a certain announcer will not have much to say tonight. But in any case, here is Charles Lyon.
Ladies and gentlemen, because the makers of Alka-Seltzer and one-a-day brand vitamin tablets want to bring you as much news as possible during their period tonight, they have requested that all commercial announcements be eliminated. So, back to the newsroom.
But only for a moment. We switch in turn to Earl Godwin in the newsroom in Washington.
And good evening, folks. Why was the American fleet raided and warships knocked out, a stronghold punctured, 3,000 Americans killed or wounded in one of our strongest points? Many people in Congress and some places else want to know. Representative Dingell of Michigan will ask why tomorrow in rather formal manner with the court-martial touches. I talked to Dingell not 5 minutes ago. He said that the battle wagons had been tied up for weekends with not enough men on them or not enough steam up to get out and man them. There were not enough men to man the aircraft guns either on the ships or in the Air Corps, and he wants to say that he thinks that we were caught off guard, if not asleep. Why were the men not prepared to meet this raid far out at sea? He's going to ask or suggest or demand court-martial proceedings against 5 top Army and Navy commanders, including Admiral Husband E. Kimmel, Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Fleet for the naval debacle, as he calls it, at Pearl Harbor. He told me tonight that he was groping for information, and that if the Army and Navy did not comply with his suggestion, that he would introduce a formal resolution for a court-martial later in the week. Well, that's rather startling news, because up to that time, everything seemed to be going along happily. There never was any doubt in the minds of competent Washington observers that this country, this government, Congress, would declare war on Japan with the greatest possible speed and complete unanimity. The fact that Jeanette Rankin of Montana spoiled the vote with what some of her colleagues believe was simply maudlin sentimentality doesn't seem to count here in Washington. Sit down, sister, yelled a nearby congressman as Miss Rankin tried to interrupt the vote again today, as she did in the other time she voted no in the other World War. There are other serious things to consider here, and one is that American losses in this murderous raid were possibly a bit worse than our government has let us know or even found out. The Japanese seem to claim much heavier punishment than was contained in the White House statement this morning. In addition, the president seemed to me to hint that a deep dent in our Army had been effected when he told Congress in his address today these words: no matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory. The American purpose, henceforth, I take it, is to find the Japanese fleet and send it to the bottom of the Pacific. In the vast moves of this war chessboard, our experts find the Japanese raid on Hawaii might be a diversion planned to keep the United States concentrated in the Pacific or its own troubles. It would not be difficult now, if it was necessary, to declare war all around. The Navy invokes the Espionage Act of 1918 for secrecy. The Army does something similar. The Navy will hardly even give you the time. Stephen Early, the President's Secretary tonight, charges that Germany pushed Japan into this dastardly act, and he also denies that the least lend aid to our other friends will be affected. The stream of munitions will continue. And now back to John W. Vandercook in New York.
It was a big day in London, too, today. The House of Commons met. Prime Minister Churchill voiced the Empire's declaration of war against Japan. And our own News of the World reporter spent the day dashing from Downing Street to Commons to the BBC.
A member of the German High Command has appeared suddenly in Tokyo. He's there, according to this story, as advisor to the Japanese in modern air warfare. The implications are pretty obvious if the story is true. According to the date, however, here, that will be added to the list of fouls for which he'll have to pay the penalty one of these days. The story about General von Niesel is linked with people's speculation as to just how closely Berlin and Rome and Tokyo are really tied. Just how binding does each consider the tripartite treaty? Speculation has Berlin on the verge of declaring war with the United States. Swedish sources, some of them, think differently. There's a reported feeling there that the Axis is at least considering that Japan is the aggressor in this case, and that relieves them of answering her call to come in under the tripartite arrangement, if she calls. Obviously, for the Axis, the word aggressor can have no significance except as a means to a political end of self-interest. We return you now to New York.
And now for word which will come to us directly from the Pacific area. We take you now to San Francisco.
This is the San Francisco newsroom. We take you now to Burt's Island in Manila.
Hello, NBC. This is Burt's Island speaking from Manila after... Hello, NBC. This is Burt's Island speaking from Manila after a very trying night under air raid conditions. We told you early this morning of the bombing of Manila, and I give you now the official report just released by the Office of the United States American Forces in the Far East. The first official reports of the bombing this morning at 3:09 a.m. at Nichols Field were released just a few moments ago by the USAFI. The official statement is as follows. In the raid on Nichols Field, which was conducted by approximately 10 Japanese bombers, one hangar was damaged and one officer's quarters was burned. The casualty list consists of 1 soldier killed and 12 wounded, all Americans. At Iber Zambales, of which the first reports were made yesterday afternoon at 5:45, it was reported this morning by USAFI that the damage was heavy. The unconfirmed casualty list includes 100 dead and 100 wounded. This number is divided up about half and half between soldiers and civilians. One set of barracks was burned. It was also announced that due to last night's attack on Nichols Field, which is a military objective, the thickly populated district of Paranaque will be evacuated. Paranaque, by the way, is the residential area surrounding Nichols Field in the southern part of Manila. In all probability, the evacuation will be carried out today. As a matter of fact, early this morning, Mr. Don Bell and myself took a trip out to Nichols Field to see what we could see. What we saw mostly was an endless line of men, women, and children with carretellas, horses, and every other kind of conveyance trotting to the south of Manila, loaded with household effects and evacuating from the apparent danger zone around Nichols Field. This evacuation will probably continue throughout the day and for the next few days to come. Concerning the air raids at Clark Field, as yet there are no official reports of the extent of damages or casualties sustained during yesterday's raids. In connection with the bombing attack this morning on Nichols Field, it was officially reported that a stray bomb landed near Fort William McKinley, injuring 2 American soldiers. The air raid on Manila last night started at 3:09, and from that time until 7:15 a.m. this morning, the air raid warning was in effect. No traffic or persons were allowed to move in the street except those carrying trespasses or special passes allowing them to do so. This morning, the dawn of the second day of the war in the Far East is absolutely clear. There isn't a cloud in the sky, and it doesn't seem possible that enemy planes could possibly get into the Philippines without being sighted a long time before they were over this part of the country. So it may be that today will be free from bombings, at least around Manila. We hope so, and we'll be with you again later this morning. This is Bert Salin now returning you to NBC.
This is NBC in San Francisco, the newsroom returning you now across the country to New York.
Almost lost in the great deluge of news today from the Pacific, one important statement has come today from Berlin, which should not be overlooked. Germany has officially admitted that Hitler's invading armies have given up all hope of capturing the Soviet capital of Moscow this year. However, it has already been suggested that Hitler may already be moving troops for some use elsewhere, in some war plan as yet unknown. Down in hastily forgotten Libya, the desert war has not stopped either, and the British tonight report a slight success. At least one-third of a Nazi tank squadron operating near Tobruk has been smashed by Imperial armored columns. In Libya, though, it is agreed there have been no great developments. Berlin's comments tonight on the Japanese-American war lacked originality. Again, snarlingly, the Nazis repeat Senator Wheeler's famous phrase about flying under American boys. And with fumbling distortion, the Nazis still saw away at the story that somehow the wanton Japanese six-island attack is the fault of President Roosevelt. Otherwise, Berlin says only that the much-dubbed three-power Axis tank, which now calls clearly on Germany to declare war at once on us, is being discussed. The Nazi lie factory, which official Washington itself has today branded, quote, 100% inaccurate, also makes the startling statement that there was just nothing that embattled Winston Churchill and the endlessly patient Franklin Roosevelt wanted quite so much as a war with Japan. And here is a brief dispatch from Singapore. A communique issued about 8 p.m. said that the RAF was delivering extensive aerial counter-blows against Japanese transports attempting to land troops in northern Malaya. And there you have the news of the world up to this moment, brought to you by the makers of Alka-Seltzer, who have dispensed with their commercial announcements today in order to bring you as much news as is possible during their broadcast period. This is John W. Vandercook saying good night until this same hour tomorrow evening.
The Red Network of the National Broadcasting Company.